Hello everybody, my name is Steven and this is my friend Quack.
Hello.
And today we're going to show you on how to colonize Venus sustainably.
And why we shouldn't colonize Mars.
So why Elon Musk is wrong about Mars. Now colonizing Mars is very poor in resources. It doesn't have an atmosphere, so it can't protect us from the sun's rays, which makes it very radioactive. And radioactive can cause us to have cancer. And Mars dust is very dangerous with the constant sandstorms going around. And so we can't even step outside because even if we breathe a single bit of these Mars dust, we'll die instantly. Also, the temperatures are lower than Antarctica.
And why Venus is slightly better than Mars? Well, Venus has similar gravity to Earth, which solves a huge problem later. It has an atmosphere compared to Mars is almost non-existent, and it has a magnetic field which can shield us from harmful sun storms that deactivate machines.
So why not Musk? Elon Musk's plans are not very feasible to us now. He said he's going to launch a rocket by the end of 2024. He still hasn't done that yet. And he's saying we're going to launch Mars as soon as 2026 or 2030. But he hasn't still solved the problems of surviving the harsh environment and the supplies needed to actually go to Mars right now or in 10 to 5 years.
So another problem if we actually make it to Mars is that actually how will we sustain our race on Mars? So let's say we actually colonize Mars. Now if we breed on Mars, the children who are born on there is like adapted to Mars's gravity, leading to another race called the Martians, where they can't go into Earth's atmosphere without suffering heavy damages, or they can't even act on Earth. This creates another race that is weak to Earth's gravity and can only stay on Mars. This will be avoided by if we colonize Venus first, then create some technology to avoid said problem.
So now we're going to show you how to colonize Venus. So first we need to cool down Venus. As you know, Venus is the hottest planet in the solar system, reigning at 464 Celsius degrees hot, which for reference is if you step on the surface, you will instantly burn. So we can use chemicals. We will transport chemicals from Earth, and we will use special machinery to transform CO2 into oxygen. But this will take a very long time because there's only a few machines available, and transforming would take a really long time. Or two, we could redirect sunlight using mirrors. We could shade Venus in some sort of shadow that we can use mirrors to reflect the sunlight off. So we can let this planet naturally cool in space. But how much can the strongest mirror reflect? We know that the sun produces 133,200 lumens. And the strongest mirror reflects 99.99% light. So the equation will be light from the sun times percentage of light reflected equals light reflected. In conclusion, and basically this means that we can reflect most of the light, and shading Venus will actually be successful. It will look like this. We let sunlight go in, it'll bounce and go back in. So Venus is in the shade, it's not being hit by any sunlight around it.
The Great Flood. Now, when Venus is cooling rapidly, CO2 begins to form into kind of liquid, then forms as ice. Now we have, after 60 years of rapidly cooling, we have an ice-cold Venus. Now you can take a stroll and a stride across Venus. If you don't mind dying from the lack of oxygen, sheer cold, and the amount of radioactive elements present on Venus. There are actually two ways to actually remove the CO2. One is probably a plan that looks easy and actually good on paper, but not good in when we actually do it, we put a tarp over all the CO2. This is bad in some ways. First, the tarp needs to cover a whole planet. We don't have any tarp that big. Second, if we actually manage to cover it, then we put land and water on it. Energy will go into the plastic wrap, then try to melt down the solidified CO2. This creates a huge amount of pressure in the ground, then will actually force the ground to explode. We don't want to live on the time bomb. Second, we're gonna mine the CO2. This is the most conventional and the best way to actually remove the CO2 from Venus. We're gonna use robots to mine the CO2, then use space tethers or railguns to launch them into Venus' orbit or Europa for future use.
So before we get whatever we do with the solidified CO2, we need water. And so we're going to extract some water from Europa, which has like 300 billion liters of water in that planet. And we're not going to use conventional rockets because it's cost way too much money and a lot of time. So we're going to use space tethers to Venus. Here how they work. Video. It's a video. Anyway, so we have weight over here. This is where it's going to carry the object and launch it across space. And so this is the route. This is not remotely to scale, but this is the route. We're going to launch it from Europa and then into this cooling Venus.
Now we're going to heat Venus up again. So now the CO2 is fully removed. We can now heat up Venus without worrying that the CO2 will retain and trap heat in Venus, then make it hot, like 464 degrees hot again. So we're gonna have two ways. The first way is so-so, I think. The mirrors we use to shade Venus, we're gonna remove it and let Venus bathe in sunlight again. So this will heat up Venus again. But have you ever wondered why Earth is the only planet that has life? Yeah, because it's in the habitable zone of the sun. Venus is not. So it isn't hot as before, but it's going to get too hot for us humans to survive. So the second solution will be, we're going to create an artificial sun cycle. One Venus days is 161 Earth days. So this will come in handy when we actually transport Earthlings to Venus. And also, we can control where the heat goes onto Venus. We look like so.
So now we're going to need life and oxygen, and we're going to make it a livable planet. We're going to introduce cyanobacteria into the atmosphere. So this bacteria is actually responsible for creating oxygen on Earth 4 billion years ago. And we can do the same thing here. So this bacteria actually absorbs the CO2 and then it will release oxygen. CO2 is its food. And when it poops, well, when it goes to the toilet or something, it will release oxygen.
Now, we're going to introduce vegetation to the atmosphere. Do you remember when we launched all those rock-solid CO2 into Venus's atmosphere? Now we're going to launch it back to Venus, let it melt. Now we're going to have excess CO2 on Venus. We're going to introduce plants and trees to transfer even more of the CO2 into breathable and living oxygen so we can use it. Then the last step is to introduce livestock and humans. Humans are necessary to this plan also, as they can explore and dot down the past, present on Venus. We can also introduce livestock to make kind of a farm if we have enough material and supplies.
Now, we have some limitations. For now, we do not have the correct technology to transform other planets. We haven't have the technology to even go to another planet. So this plan might work in a few generations to come. So we'll be waiting. And in conclusion, we still do not have the technology to do this. However, we can wait into the future. And even though you'll seem like, hey Steven, why does this planet take so long? It's gonna take a few thousand or hundreds even of years. But think about it. It's not like humans have never built a project that lasted over centuries. And this is terraforming a planet we're talking about. So we can't expect it to just be at least a few hundred years. Thank you for listening.